Tonight on this Uncanny Earth, we are talking about mass media manipulation. It's time to get uncanny.
Oh, where's Rob at? Where's he at? Turned off his camera.
Like, turn them both off.
Yep. See, I didn't know that it was just going to cover up our cameras like that with that because I hadn't tested it yet. But
Well,
hey, guys,
first
that's our
test.
new intro.
But we'll get it worked out.
Yeah. I saw it like cover us up and I was like, oh, and I turned off my cam.
That's what I
And
did.
then, yeah,
That's what I did.
looks nice though.
Yo, Lee Dickey says, solid intro, boys. Here's to a great show. Cheers. Hardest working man out there, Mr. Lee Dickey, out there working his you know what up. Working like 6,000 hours in a 24-hour day. He got that. He grind heavy. He gonna stack money. He gonna come visit us. And
See him and Hornack, you need to start a business together, and then they can each work half days, and then they can hang out the other half.
Yeah, but Hornacky never hangs out with anybody. So
well,
they'd hang out with each other because they work together. And then they would just talk about work the entire time. How was work today? Oh, work. Boy, my dogs are barking. Or, work talk like that. Like, oh my gosh, the clientele today was
living the dream.
Ha ha ha, working hard or hardly working. Because that is the way she goes, ladies and gents. So what's going on, everybody? Welcome to a very special 25/8, 366 days a year. That is correct.
I'm going to pop both of those up there because I missed it the first time.
That's the home. Y'all go subscribe to him like ASAP. Go subscribe to Lee Dickey TV. That's the channel. He tells dad jokes on his Instagram too, and I respect it.
Speaking of, that'll be next, plus an outro. Keep your eyes open. I've got, if you liked that intro, we will have a dad joke segment, and we'll have the outro. So coming up, big stuff happening here.
And he even got my Plague Tale, so he must have pulled that like
I
that
did.
was like my last stream actually.
Yep, I went to my own channel for the Spirits Club. I went to yours for the game part, and I wanted to get something that wasn't easily recognizable so that they couldn't be like, you can't show our game on broadcast on your videos. So I just grabbed a few seconds with a recorder and
no, you can show it. I mean, it's even covered with audio, so you can't even hear me talking.
Yeah.
No, you're good. But yeah, what's going on? What's going on in the world today, or at least the United States? Today, the United States had their election cycle. Our midterm election cycle is in full effect. Well, actually, it's winding down now because it's
most places have closed and they're just doing the counting and they're getting everything settled.
Yes, I went out and voted today, of course, because it is my civic duty to do so. Though if you did not or you don't want to talk about it, you do not have to. I'm a man that believes voting and politics and all that jazz should be up to your own personal beliefs. And you keep it personal. You don't go attacking somebody else just because they believe a certain way or they follow a certain political party. Because if you do that, you're a jerk. So remember that, you're a jerk. I don't care if you're on the blue aisle, the red aisle, the in-between aisle, whatever aisle you're in, be a nice person. Don't be a jerk. Just because somebody voted for candidate A doesn't give you the right to be a jerk to them because they voted for candidate B. So, do whatever. Be a nice person. Don't be a jerk. Or we'll kick your butts. I 100% miss the days when you went and voted and nobody cared. Nobody was like protesting. Yep. Nobody was like, I'm gonna go up there and go crazy. No, everybody was like, well, let me go vote. Let me go home. Let me go vote. Let me go home. You just said it. Hey, I'm gonna go vote when I get off work.
And then you read it in the paper the next day. You don't even stay up to find out. You just read in the paper, like, oh, okay, well, that's crap and that's good. Okay, whatever. Back to work.
Yeah, exactly. I miss them days. But you know, people, because of our topic tonight, will be like, "But they gotta get all crazy because the media told me that I go nuts and inside of the membrane, the Cypress Hill song." So
insane in the brain.
I know that whole second verse. I had it taped on a VHS tape off MTV when MTV still played music back in like.
That's a vintage classic right there.
100%.
That memory, that whole memory is vintage classic.
100%. Like I taped. I had a whole. I hope I can find it. But yeah, I had and hello, Leah Carpenter's here giving us the wave, if you will. But like I stated, we used to tape VHS tapes off the MTV. I had that. I had Dre Day, and I had like a couple others. I still have my old mixtapes from the radio, my old cassette tapes.
Yep, like, you'd sit and you'd wait. You'd wait for the good songs to come on, and then you'd have to try to record it right when like the guy stopped talking because you're like, stop telling me about the song, just play it, because they would talk over the intro.
100%. Yeah, those were the days. Work, vote, wake up, go back to work, have no worries. That's right. And I agree. So if you voted today, no matter, like I said before, and I'll say this again, no matter what political aisle you stand in, don't be a jerk to somebody who stands in a different political aisle, all right? You don't need to go on the social media and be like, well, my candidate lost, so I'm going to complain and yell and do things. Don't do that. Vote. Don't tell nobody about it. If you want to tell people close to you, that's fine. But you don't got to brag about it. Nobody cares. Just vote and go do your business. So that's what I did. I did my civic duties, but I didn't brag about it on social media. I just did it. Told a couple people I was going to do it. Didn't say I was voting for it. And then I kept it pressing. Because we have other pressing matters to attend to today. So welcome to episode, what are we on, like 209, 10?
It's supposed to be 211. Like, I think the last 2 or 3 I kept messing up for some reason or another, and
you
kept
100%
calling in 2011.
I had to change a lot of like.
This numbers. Is probably like the third 2011, but this is the real 2011. This is the real 211.
God dang, we've been doing 2011 shows. So what I'm gonna do for your pleasure, for your leisure, what is this? Oh, there we go. Cool.
Behind the scenes,
Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. All right, hopefully that works. All right, do not be don't be fooled by the who's a whatchamafuzz.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Indeed. I don't know what happened. Okay, check it out though. So I got to do a little bit of split screening here. Sorry, the way things set up, it's a mess. All right, I need to get like a whole nother screen. That's going to be in the next.
You'll have to get 6 screens, like some of those people who are, the hottest show on the internet.
I don't even want to talk about that mess. All right, so that's just you. We're just playing around with stuff right now. That's if I want to do that. That's that. Oh, that's just the host that nobody wants to see. That's him.
I want to see me.
All right. So as you can see, we have roughly they came out about what is today, my people peeps. Today is the 8th. So roughly a week ago yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security was leaked, and it's quietly broadening its efforts to curb speech it considers dangerous. This is a very slippery. A very slippery. You know, slippery.
That's dangerous speech right there.
This is 100%. This is definitely a slippery slope. Years of internal DHS memos, emails, and documents obtained via leaks and an ongoing lawsuit, as well as public documents, illustrate an expansive effort by the agency to influence tech platforms. So here we have a governing body, right? The DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, I believe founded after 9/11 under the President Bush Jr. administration. But they have been working to police misinformation, which is false information spread unintentionally, disinformation, false information spread intentionally. Misinformation is unintentionally, and disinformation is intentionally. Malinformation is factual information shared, typically out of context, with harmful intent that allegedly threatens. This is the one here that really gets you. Malinformation that threatens U.S. interests. U.S. interests. Very different. And now, while the board was widely ridiculed, immediately scaled back, and then shut down within a few months, other initiatives are underway as DHS pivots to monitoring social media. Now that its original mandate, the war on terror, right, which is one of the biggest lies that we were ever told, that there was a war on terror, much like the
Right behind the war on drugs.
Right
Yep.
behind the war on drugs.
Drugs won that war, by the way. I don't know if anybody noticed.
Drugs 100% run that war. But that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But so like all these public platforms and these private platforms, but they've been using their quote unquote push, if you will, that we have as the government, to influence or try to sway this stuff here. And according to meeting minutes and other records appended to a lawsuit filed by Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, a Republican who is running for Senate, discussions have ranged from the scale and scope of government intervention in online discourse to the mechanics of streamlining takedown requests for false or intentionally misleading information. And he says platforms have to get comfortable with the government. It's really interesting how hesitant they remain. Microsoft executive Matt Matterson, which sounds like a straight up fake name, Masterson, sorry, a former DHS official. So they already have somebody in the tech companies from the Department of Homeland Security, which me being me, I don't trust the Department of Homeland Security, but I don't trust the government, period. So there you go. And if you guys want, I can pull up historical documents that prove that the government is 100% corrupt. And most Americans have that access now. So you should definitely take a look at that at your leisure. If you also, I want to state that I am not a one party or the next type of person. So this will not be a heavily like Republican show or a heavily Democrat show. It's just especially facts right now.
Considering that at the start for this article, the Department of Homeland Security was started under the Bush Jr. administration, right? But it has continued under both the Obama administration, then into the Trump administration, and then into the Biden administration. And it functions pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Regardless of who's in charge, it's still doing pretty much the same stuff. Like this past year, we had the big news, and who knows, it might have even been just a fluke, and the whole thing was just to see how we would react to begin with. They had that whole disinformation board that everybody was calling a Ministry of Truth kind of thing, because it's very similar to what they have in other countries like China and some Middle Eastern countries where they actually like the government is in charge of everything you do on the internet. And that fell apart. Maybe it didn't.
Maybe not.
Maybe it's just public. We don't know. But I think it was more like what would happen if we told people we had one of these rather than an actual thing. And because of the bad reaction, they were kind of like, okay, we'll just shuffle that aside. But I feel like it's something that exists anyway, and they were just trying to see how public they could be with it.
I do want to note that there is a correction here that that is at the end of this article, and I want to make sure we get that correction because the facts matter. Of course. A correction right here on November 2nd, 2022, due to an editing error after publication on November 1st. The piece briefly stated that a DHS official had texted a Microsoft official that platforms have got to get comfortable with government. In fact, it was the other way around. Microsoft executive Matt Masterson, a former DHS official, texted Jen Easterly, a DHS director. So I wanted to make sure we get that out of the way in case that does not get brought up again. Because I think that that's important because I want to get the facts correct. I want to make sure we get who said what and what said who. Now, what I'm going to tell you next, and this part is really what makes me distrust the government as a whole. Like, I don't like the government. I'm not going to go do anything crazy. I have my opinions and they're my own. But in a March meeting, Laura Demlow, an FBI official, warned that the threat of subversive information on social media could undermine support for the U.S. government. Demlow, according to notes of the discussion attended by senior executives from Twitter and JP Morgan Chase, stressed that we need a media infrastructure that is held accountable. Now, if you go through this and you really take apart what she's actually saying, she's basically saying we need a media infrastructure that we can control, that we can funnel the information as much as we can so that the consumer of the information doesn't distrust us. And I think that's a bad thing. I don't think you should ever fully trust your government and or political officials of any form, any party, because we see what happens when you trust politicians. They don't. I don't really think that politicians have your best interests in mind. Um, a lot of the time, they have their best interest in mind, and that's important to note. And we also see here that we have Twitter, which was recently bought out by by Elon Musk, which I think was hilarious. I think Elon buying that is probably one of my favorite things of 2022. That might have to go up there on the 2022. But I'm a big fan of Elon Musk personally. I'm a big fan of what he's doing for getting us into space, getting us onto Mars. You know, it's like the 60s all over again. We get to see the space shuttles and the satellites and things going onto orbit and hopefully extending our reach to Mars. I'm very excited about that. And so when he bought Twitter, and I would go through and I would see people just having like absolute mental breakdowns over the whole $8 thing. And
I know plenty of people, like not personally, but people on message boards that I'm part of who are just like, yeah, I closed my account the day that he took over. And I'm kind of like, okay, but if you liked it, why didn't you work to improve it?
Here's the thing. A lot of people, and they're flip-flop artists, right? So like on Facebook, a lot of people are very pro politics. They will spread their and I'm guilty of this. I'm a hypocrite. I'm not gonna lie. I don't do it anymore. I'm not.
I scaled back
I'm
myself.
I'm not even on Facebook really that much because to me, I could be doing other things. I could be studying for the show, or I could be studying for our YouTube channel. I could be, doing some productive things in my life. And I'm not saying that people don't, but it's just not me anymore. Anyways, watching people on Facebook when other folks would get banned or they would get their stuff deleted or shadow banned, like, oh well, this is a private company, so you don't have to. You could take it elsewhere. There's no free speech. Beyond the flip side of this, the Twitter people that went nuts over this are saying are now screaming to be the victim. And none of them are really victims. Let's be perfectly honest. None of these people are victims because the free speech aspect is still there. You're just paying for the verification check mark, $8 a month. And I think that's a hilarious meme that I think really should be taking off. But I've seen a couple hilarious memes. But I like the idea of moving Twitter back to where it was, even though I'm not a big Twitter person. But I like the idea of being able to say, within reason, anything you want. I believe that in our everyday lives. There's some things you can't say, obviously, certain words in theaters and things like that, anything that incites a mass panic, but that makes sense. You don't want to just have people screaming fire in a crowded movie theater all the time. There should be repercussions for that, obviously. But to silence people for how they feel is ridiculous. And a lot of people say, well, there's you're free to say it, but you're not free from the consequences. And that's a very real truth. I think it's a very interesting fact that you're not immune to the consequences of your speech or of the words you choose to utter from your lips. But I still think you should be allowed to say it. Hate speech, whatever speech, people want to say it, because the minute we lose the ability to say hateful things to each other, which I'm not going to do that, but I do not think that there should be a governing body in place that can tell you that if you say this word or you say these words, that we're going to come and arrest you. And I don't mean like in a non-threatening manner. If you want to yell racial epithets outside of your home, by all means, do that, right? That doesn't mean you're going to get free from somebody coming down and maybe giving you a punch in the face, right? But I believe that you should be allowed to say these things. I don't think anybody has the right to tell you what you can and can't say. But on the same token, there's consequences for the things that you can and can't say.
And that's the thing of it too. Like most of the time, the reaction nowadays is, oh, someone's saying something that's truly awful, truly terrible, like really bad, like something that everybody for the most part can agree, like that's pretty bad. Yes. The first reaction is, oh, we have to stop them from saying it.
Right.
Well, you're not really going to stop them from saying it. You're just going to stop them from saying it in the avenue that they said it in.
Yes.
they're still going to go someplace else. They're still going to feel the way they feel. You're not going to change their mind.
Right.
There's two ways you can deal with that. You can engage them in a discourse and try to change their mind. And some people are just hateful people. There's no changing their mind.
You're not going to do it.
If they want to keep on going, then they're showing you what kind of a person they are.
Right.
And you can just be like, okay, well, now that I know that about you, I don't got to associate with you. And enough people do that, and these people get pushed off naturally to the fringe where they are. And maybe they're still going to do something. Maybe they're still going to try to do some kind of violent whatever. But you know that they've said these things in the past, and now you can be like, okay, I know you're acting funny. You're going to use this as justification, and now I can put a stop to it.
Right.
Putting the censor on people isn't really stopping them from doing that. It's just giving them more of a reason to be like, you know what, they're stopping me from being heard, so now I have to be more direct.
Yep.
Best.
And you can't keep an eye on those people if you shut them down, because what that does is that energizes a whole nother group of people that allows them to feel like, well, my voice isn't being heard, so now I have to go in and I have to radicalize with this individual, because you let ignorant people talk long enough, they'll be quiet.
They'll dig a hole
after
they'll
nobody
dig a
hears
hole
them.
and then
Right. After nobody hears them, they'll go away. But if you let them keep talking, and then you're like, well, we're going to censor you. Oh, now they're censoring me. Now you just
what I'm saying is dangerous. It means something. Yep. My favorite way to deal with this kind of thing is actually from a game that we both really enjoy. It's from Mass Effect 2.
Yes.
There's a quote from here. And for people who aren't familiar, I'm not going to get into the whole everything because it would take way too long. But there's an alien species that their genetics have been limited, so they can't procreate at a certain level, so they're dying out.
Yep.
And what you do in this little mission, just to kind of give you some background and context for what I'm going to say, is you're going to help this scientist who has a way to manipulate certain genetic things so that bodies will ignore this defect, and they'll keep on going. And his theory is, he sees it as a warrior sees it, which you don't have to be a warrior type person to go by this, but it's a good philosophy. He says to your main character that he's going to give this disease the biggest insult he can think of. He's going to ignore it. And that's really what it is. Like, people want to be acknowledged. They want the attention. They want to be like, hey, you know what? I'm angry. Even if you're negative towards it, you're giving them the attention that they want. So how do you crush that kind of stuff before it gets out of hand? Ignore it.
Yep.
It's not necessarily going to go away, but it's not going to bother you, and you don't have to worry about it. And if they try to take it to the next level after that, you have options to deal with it from then on. Right. So that's why I usually look at that kind of stuff.
And so we'll kind of get to the root of this, and this is something that I find to be interesting here. Is the DHS's mission to fight disinformation stems from concerns around Russian influence in the 2016 presidential election began taking shape again during the 2020 election over efforts to shape discussions around vaccine policy during the coronavirus pandemic. Documents collected by The Intercept from a variety of sources, including content officials and publicly available reports, reveal the evolution of more active measures by the DHS. Now, something I always find to be really weird and kind of ingrained into a lot of Americans these days, especially, is their irrational fear of Russia. I remember in 2016, everybody was like, "Oh my God, the Russians hacked the election." Not really. They didn't really hack it.
No evidence was found. No actual, nothing was discovered that showed that it was actually a big deal.
And if you really would look into the history of the United States, we have gone into Latin American countries and overthrown dictators, Colombia, a few others, and there's a lot more to that involved the Bush senior administration, the Clinton administration, drugs going through the port of Miami. There's a lot to it. There is the war on drugs was started by your very own government,
CIA,
FBI, all that. Like, there's leaked documentation. The CIA planted crack cocaine in poor neighborhoods.
That's not
this is true.
Conspiracy theory. That's true stuff.
Facts. This is legit facts. I will link articles to you guys to show you that this is facts. Like, this was something that happened, and I knew people personally who grew up in these areas that said, yeah, we'd be up and we'd hear a train come through. The train would stop, and there'd be guns on the train. And this has also been something that has been proven. The CIA did this too. This goes back to Lyndon Baines Johnson. This goes back to Nixon, and then it
Mhm.
goes all the way up to the current administration with the crime bill that was passed. It's very deep. It's a very deep thing. So when people say to me, what party are you for? I'm not for any party because I have found documentation proving that both parties were 100% corrupting our beautiful country, and I don't really care for that. But back to the Russia thing, we have had this irrational fear of Russia since World War II. Went through the Cold War, and everybody thought they were
Mhm.
getting nuked right and left. Then this whole thing with the Ukraine that just popped up recently, but it's been an ongoing fight that's been going on since 2014, and so it's very strange to me, and I've always said this, that whatever the media is telling you, whatever is on that front page, and my professor told me this in college. He told me, he said, whenever you get the Wall Street Journal, because I really enjoyed reading the Wall Street Journal. I still enjoy reading it when I get the chance. He said, read the front page, right? And then go and read the back pages. Go to the back of the Wall Street Journal and go through there and read that. That's where the real news is. It's these little mergers, these little tech things, these little
Mhm.
company acquisitions, bankruptcies, things like that that shape the environment around you, much like we've discussed with local government. It starts with the local government and then it builds up to your president, vice president, so on and so forth. So just something to note. And I find it to be fascinating, the psychology of the normal American when it comes to Russia. They're so quick to be like, oh, they're communists. Like that's the first words out of their mouth. Dirty commies, the Reds, the Red Scare. It's just a
Mhm.
really, like, I would like to do a psychological um paper on people's irrational fear of the Russians. I know people will probably get mad, like, well, what about these other people in this country and in Russia and this and that? To be honest with you, it doesn't concern me because it isn't my people here. It's not my fellow Americans. Like, we've got a hard road as it is. We can't really worry about other people if we can't even take care of ourselves. If we're busy infighting, how are we going to help anybody else? But
Mhm.
that's beside the point. And war in general is a horrible thing, and a lot of people have died from that. So I definitely understand people's sadness, especially when it comes to the babies and stuff like that. They're innocent. The kids are always the most innocent thing, but no worries. We're not going to get too deep into it. So if we keep going here, so the DHS's capstone report outlining the department's strategy and priorities in the coming years, the department plans to target inaccurate information, in quotes, on a wide range of topics, including the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, the efficacy. Is that supposed to be efficiency? I feel like that's efficiency. Maybe that's a wrong word.
Maybe the efficacy.
Efficacy? Oh, yeah, I see what
Yeah.
you mean. Brain not working. COVID-19 vaccines, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. support to Ukraine. The challenge is particularly acute in the marginalized communities, the report states, which are often the targets of false or misleading information, such as false information on voting procedures targeting people of color. The inclusion of the 2021 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan is particularly noteworthy given that House Republicans, should they take the majority in the midterms, have vowed to investigate. This makes Benghazi look like a much smaller issue, said Republican Mike Johnson, Republican out of Louisiana, a member of the Armed Services Committee, adding that finding answers will be a top priority. Now, the one thing I've always noticed about our Middle Eastern influence is it's always over there. It's never anywhere else. We're never in Venezuela, where their whole government just straight basically collapsed.
Mhm.
And people say, "What's about oil? It's about oil." It's not really about oil. The more research that I have been doing, and the more I've been reading about the Middle East and about Syria, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, all of these places, Afghanistan, and then you read about like what happened in Afghanistan and what people have seen in Afghanistan, that country as a whole. When you read about what they have seen there, you're like, oh, okay, they have seen giants, they have seen UFO anomalies, they have seen biblical artifacts, they have seen biblical structures and religious structures and things that have dated back well before the United States of America was even a thought in George Washington's eyes or whatever. I don't know. But why are we always over there? And I think that the media will always, in my opinion, cover this information up because they never really go into the broad scope of that. They never say, well, it's not about oil because it really isn't, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
I had the pleasure of talking to somebody that had a Tesla, and they said that the battery was the worst part because the battery is basically running the whole car and it's the most expensive thing. But they said they liked it, and I could see that being a possibility in the future. And then that cuts out oil, period. So what are we over there for? If we're big to push this whole green initiative, then why are we still over there? You think,
Hydrogen power is even better, and it's actually
yeah,
workable now. There's hydrogen cars right
yeah,
now
yep,
that you can drive around like any other car.
yep,
We just don't have very many stations for them, and they're all basically at the prototype stage, but they're all workable things. They could mass produce them any day now. They really could. And hydrogen power is ridiculously efficient.
yeah,
Like it's basically water.
yep.
The
The
only
molecules
output,
that make
the
it up.
exhaust is just pure water that goes
It's
back into there.
water
It's water
vapor.
vapor. So there's
You,
no pollution. There's none
you,
of that.
you would listen. I feel bad for that because you would have one of these kids making a TikTok video or a YouTube video of them
Mhm.
inhaling the water vapor from the exhaust. Like I can just see that
Yeah.
going very poorly. But if we keep going here, how disinformation is defined by the government has not been clearly articulated, and the inherently subjective nature of what constitutes disinformation provides a broad opening for DHS officials to make politically motivated determinations about what constitutes dangerous speech. What constitutes in their definition, not
Mhm.
ours. Um, but if we keep reading the article here, it also goes into the Bush administration. In 2004, for instance, DHS officials faced pressure from the George W. Bush administration to heighten the national threat level for terrorism in a bid to influence voters prior to the election. According to former DHS Secretary Tom Ridge, U.S. officials have routinely lied about an array of issues, from the causes of its wars in Vietnam and Iraq to their more recent obfuscation. Did I say that right?
Obfuscation.
Obfuscation. There's some words I have trouble saying,
Mm.
folks. Sorry about that. Around the role of the National Institutes of Health in funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology's coronavirus research. So it's not all cut and dry, as a lot of people think. It's not as easy as just, well, I'm going to go vote
Mhm.
Democrat or I'm going to go vote Republican, and they'll be the change that I want in my community. When you realize that we have been lied to by our own government for well over 40 years, and that's just that's just like what we have been alive to see. They go in a little bit about because it's hard to not get too political into this, and I don't really want to get
Mhm.
too political. I don't want to get to the point where I'm starting to call out people and be like, yeah, if you vote this way or that way. I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to do that at all. Um,
The
there we
point
go.
here really would be mostly just,
Right,
vote more on issues. Don't really go for the people necessarily because the people are just faces. They're just people in
right,
suits.
right.
They don't know what they're doing. Try to go for the issues and make sure it's an issue that's actually something that you think can realistically be addressed or changed. Because there's a lot of issues that can't. People will say,
Yeah,
"Oh, we got to focus on this big huge thing and this
yeah,
big huge thing."
sure.
And again, I don't want to make like Rob said, we don't want to just call anybody out on it, but the
Yeah, I
big
wouldn't do
Democrat
that.
platform right now is we have to save democracy. Well, that's a big fancy thing, and
Right.
it's inspiring, sure, but it doesn't detail anything. It doesn't say anything. It doesn't
And
do anything. So if you're just going to vote for people who say we're going to save democracy, okay, but what are they actually going to do?
right. But democracy was never really in jeopardy. When you control democracy, it's never really in jeopardy. It's just part of a bigger playbook. And I know people are going to be like, man, he's a crazy conspiracy theorist. I'm not really that crazy when the evidence is right in front of us. When
And
the
I'm not
evidence,
even saying don't vote Democrat, don't vote this, because
sure, I'm not saying,
vote for whoever
no,
you want to.
it's your
I
vote, not
I
mine.
don't pick the parties. I try to go independent more often than not, as long as
Same.
the independents aren't people wearing boots on their head. Which I mean, even that guy might have gotten a few votes from me in the past,
Or
just
wanting to
because.
give out copious amounts of free money and
Yeah,
then turn around and tax everybody with it. So,
yeah, like some other super big folk hero type people from the last couple of years here.
right.
But but yeah, it's both sides will give you these big, huge promises. Like I'm sure
Yes.
Republicans are going to be like, "Hey, we're going to fix the inflation," and it's like, no, you can't just fix it like that. Just like we're going
There's
to
a
save democracy. Well, you can't just do that. It's just, what are you actually
right,
going to do, sirs or
right,
madam?
and the thing is like every person before the last person, or every person after the last person, just tries to undo what that previous person did. So
Yep.
really, nothing gets done, even though and really it's just one big measuring contest. To be honest, oh, they
Mm.
did this, we got to undo that. Oh, the people love us, they undid it, but that was actually helpful. Like, what are you
It's ping
doing?
pong. It's all ping pong.
And it's like a custody battle, and we're the children that are in the middle of it, and that's the sad part about it.
Mm.
But if you look here, the extent to which the DHS initiatives affect Americans' daily social feeds is unclear. During the 2020 election, the government flagged numerous posts as suspicious, many of which were taken down. Documents cited in the Missouri Attorney General's lawsuit disclosed, and in a 2021 report by the Election Integrity Partnership at Stanford University, found that nearly 4,800 flagged items. Technology platforms took action on 35%, either removing, labeling, or soft blocking speech, meaning the users were only able to view the content after bypassing a warning screen. The research was done in consultation with the CISA, or the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Prior to that election, tech companies including Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Discord, Wikipedia, Microsoft, LinkedIn, Verizon Media met on a monthly basis with the CIA or the FBI, the CISA, and other government representatives. According to NBC News, the meetings were part of initiatives still ongoing between the private sector and government to discuss how firms would handle misinformation during the election. And they stepped up counter disinformation efforts in 2018, following high profile hacking incidences of U.S. firms when Congress passed and President Donald Trump signed the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency Act, forming a new wing of the DHS devoted to protecting critical national infrastructure. An August 2022 report by the DHS Office of Inspector General sketches the rapidly accelerating move toward policing disinformation. From the outset, the CISA boasted of an evolved mission to monitor social media discussions while routing disinformation concerns to private sector platforms. Once again, the government wants to control everything you see and read so that you don't get a bad taste in your mouth for the government. I'm very surprised the stuff that we've researched hasn't gone missing.
Mm.
A lot of our ancient historical stuff, and listen, we're not the only country that does this. We're the
Oh
country
yeah. Yeah.
that's a little more lax, but there's other countries like Egypt and Egypt's, Ministry of Antiquities that won't let anybody
Mm.
up in there unless you are a card-carrying archaeologist of the highest order. And even then, you get a sliver
Mhm.
of the knowledge that they truly know and or understand.
Government
And
approved, and you have to
yes,
follow what you like. If you go in and you have something challenging to say, chances are they won't let you release it. They won't let you release your findings.
yep,
And if you try to get it published, the other big publisher forces in the science world
yeah,
generally will be like, no, we can't publish that because
yep,
it'll be detrimental to another government, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it goes. And there's nothing you can do. You can post about it on like our show or like websites or dark web or wherever you want,
right,
but then it becomes labeled as fringe. Then it becomes
yep,
labeled as unverified because it hasn't been peer reviewed, and it can't be peer reviewed because they refuse to do it.
yeah, yeah. And if we look here under President Joe Biden, the shifting focus on disinformation has continued. In January 2021, CISA replaced the Countering Foreign Influence Task Force with the Misinformation, Disinformation, and Malinformation team, which was created to promote more flexibility to focus on general MDM. By now, the scope of the effort had expanded beyond disinformation produced by foreign governments to include domestic versions. The MDM team, according to one CISA official quoted in the IG report, counters all types of disinformation to be responsive to current events. There's something I want to get to. I got to find it real quick. But I wanted to point out something. And I remember this whole like this here where it said, the Intercept reported on the existence of a series of DHS field intelligence reports warning of attacks on cell towers which is tied to conspiracy theorists who believe 5G towers spread COVID-19. Which I say I think we can agree on something that is a
That's
it's not a very intelligent
yeah.
conspiracy theory. I'm sorry. I don't buy into it. I have conspiracy theories that I believe in. A few of them can be proven, have been proven. Operation Paperclip, Operation Northwoods, those are real things. But sorry, folks, this is one of the few that I really don't buy into. I don't believe that it's a respiratory illness. The 5G towers don't spread it. That doesn't mean it wasn't a bioweapon of some form that got out of control. That's definitely a possibility. However, to sit there and say, "Oh yeah, the 5G towers are spreading it," no, I don't think they're good for the environment, mind you. I don't think 5G is essentially good for the environment, but at the same time, I don't think that it's going to spread a whole disease. I mean, I don't know. That just seems weird. So, like in that instance, but once again, instead of them trying to shut it down, just call it ignorant, keep it moving. You shut it down, people go, "Oh, well, that must be true," because there's hardcore conspiracy theorists out there that will 100% go to bat and say, "No, that's real." My cousin's sister's aunt read Alex Jones blurb that talked about 5G can eat your babies and stuff. And
The
you gotta be
frogs.
super careful.
The frogs.
Turning the frogs into super soldiers. What I want there's a part here I wanted to get. So yeah, funny here. Last Thursday, immediately following billionaire Elon Musk's completed acquisition of Twitter, Gade was terminated from the company. That was Twitter. He did not run Twitter very well. But there is one thing I got to find it too, because I think it's very important to discuss this. I might have to put in for it. My whole thing here, and even the ACLU is really serious about this. And the ACLU is like big on rights, like to a serious degree of rights. They are even not cool with this whole thing. I'm sorry. What I'm trying to find here, I'm trying to find there's a part in here that talks about, we're going to do this because it talks about Hunter Biden's laptop, which I thought was kind of interesting. Not the laptop itself, but the fact that they went to Great Lakes to hide this laptop, which nobody still really knows what's on here. Right here. In retrospect, the New York Post reported on the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop ahead of the 2020 election, provides an elucidating case study of how this works in an increasingly partisan environment. Much of the public ignored the reporting or assumed that it was false, as over 50 former intelligence officials charged that the laptop story was a creation of Russian disinformation campaign. The mainstream media was primed by allegations of election interference in 2016. And to be sure, Trump did attempt to use the laptop to disrupt the Biden campaign. Twitter ended up banning links to the New York Post report on the contents of the laptop during the crucial weeks leading up to the election. Facebook also throttled users' ability to view the story. In recent months, a clear picture of the government's influence has emerged. And then it goes into here where it talks about Mark Zuckerberg being on the Joe Rogan podcast, saying that the background here is that the FBI came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, "Hey, just so you know, you should be on high alert that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election," Zuckerberg told Rogan. The FBI told him, Zuckerberg said, "We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump." When the Post story came out in October, Facebook thought it fit that pattern the FBI told them to look out for. Zuckerberg said he regretted the decision, as did Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter at the time. Despite claims that the laptop's contents were forged, the Washington Post confirmed that at least some of the emails on the laptop were authentic. The New York Times authenticated emails from the laptop, many of which were cited in the original New York Post reporting from October 2020. The prosecutors have examined, as part of the Justice Department's probe into whether the president's son violated the law on a range of issues, including money laundering, tax-related offenses, and foreign lobbying registration. Very interesting to note here. Go ahead.
Well, what's super interesting is, as you say that, and people might not really know this, but this investigation is still ongoing. It just doesn't get talked about. And there's been a lot of signs in the legal community pointing to charges being brought forth from this. Yeah. This late after everything. Remember how long it's been since this thing came out. And just now, like, they're considering doing some charges, and they're pretty serious charges. They're pretty I mean, and it kind of begs the question, like, if it's not connected to his dad, then why drag your feet on it so much? Why
Right.
wait this far into it? It's almost another election cycle. It's almost another
Right.
presidential election in a couple years here. So
Yep.
why, drag it if you're sure it's not actually going to involve somebody else? And I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying that as a hint, like, oh, maybe that means there is something connected
Right.
to.
Exactly.
I'm just
Exactly.
saying if you're confident in what you're looking at,
Right.
but if you don't know, then you shouldn't say so, and you should focus more
Right.
on actually getting the job done and clearing the
Right.
name of somebody. Like if
Yes.
you're certain
Yes.
like it's going to clear
Es-
somebody, get
es-
to it.
Especially for those Democrats that thoroughly love Joe Biden. Right. He was better than Trump. Whatever. That's your opinion. Just like could be someone else's opinion that Trump was better. It's whatever. But the fact that they were screaming. I'm not gonna say all of them, mind you, but a lot of Democrats are screaming, "Well, get Trump stuff," but then they were slow to say, "Get Biden stuff, get Hunter Biden stuff." And I think that the minute you don't look at both sides, right, and say, "Okay, if we're gonna go after one guy, we got to go after the second guy because if we don't go after this guy, we're setting a precedent that we're biased." And then when we're biased, when our people go up to run for election, they're going to lose, and they're going to lose in big ways because of the temper tantrums that we threw. And that's on both sides of the aisle. I'm not going to sit over here and say that one
Mhm.
side is better than the other. They're both filled with misinformation. The disinformation is prevalent in both political communities. I've seen it firsthand. I mean, we've seen it firsthand. We've had to say no. This is a thing. I told somebody once uh, about the president, and I said, "Hey, man, he was involved in this crime bill, and this happened. You know that Bush Senior and Clinton, and oh, no, he would never do that. You're a liar." And I'm like, "Well, here's the documented proof. Here's the article. Here's a link to two other sources so that it's not a biased source. It's multiple sources giving you this information."
Mm.
And I got called a name or whatever it was, but it was like, don't be upset if it tears down your view of the government. I mean, the government's afraid of that. They basically said it in this article that, hey, we want to be able to tell you how you should feel about us. We think that that is important. But and it goes on to say that it was only one of high profile example of law enforcement agencies pressuring technology firms. In many cases, the Facebook and Twitter accounts flagged by the DHS or its partners as dangerous forms of disinformation or potential foreign influence were clearly parody accounts or accounts with virtually no followers or influence. So they were able to get a little trick played, a little sneaky, got pulled into that. And it goes on to talk about the Biden administration as a whole and what it's doing. It talks about Fauci and his whole coronavirus handling, which Fauci, whatever. No matter how you feel about that guy, that whole thing was weaponized in more ways than one. Obviously, I feel like it was a bioweapon of some form that got out, but also we weaponized it against each other. Look at the mask mandates. People refused to do anything, and other people tried to force people to wear them, and other people said, "I don't care if you die." And it was a really nasty time for Americans. That didn't have to be. It didn't have to be a
Mhm.
nasty, mean yelling. It really just boiled down to you mind your business and I'll mind mine. If you want to wear a mask, that's fine. If you don't, that's also fine. I don't. The only places that I was a you have to have a mask if you're going to go in is anywhere where people are immune compromised. So hospitals, like because there's people that have cancer. Like you can't just go in there and just
And
breathe the
that's
air. They will
logical.
catch that.
That's
Like
logical. Like, I
facts.
mean, they have protections already in
Facts.
place for places like that, and
Right.
that's logic. I mean,
Right.
the thing about it is nobody trusted the natural, like, of people doing the right thing. People just assume that, we have to force you to do the right thing because you're not working fast enough. And that's what set people off.
Right.
It was like, you can't make me do this. I mean, if it
Right.
had been more like And I know some places tried this and people said it failed, or maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Uh, there were places that said, you know what, we're just going to leave it up to the individuals, but we're going to recommend that you do this because it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And after the fact, it came up that it was more to protect yourself than it was to protect anybody else anyway. And if more people
Right.
had assumed, okay, it is to protect me, unfortunately, but also fortunately, many people are pretty selfish. And if they believe that, oh, I'm in danger personally, okay,
Right.
I should do this.
Right. Right.
I think you'd win more people over by appealing to more of their human nature than trying to force people to do things.
Yeah, I have
And
to agree.
that whole thing just butts up against the whole bodily autonomy thing, which is an argument right now because, and
Right.
we're not going to talk about this at all. I'm only bringing
Right.
it up as a point. It's in the same league as the Roe versus Wade discussions people are having right now. It's a
Right.
bodily autonomy thing. All of that needs to be considered. And, you know, people didn't want to do that. People want to be like, no, you have to do this. This is for the
Right.
greater good and you're going to do it. And
Right.
that's it. And that's the
Right.
problem. As soon as
Yes.
you tell people they have to do things,
Yes.
people are going to be saying, no, I don't.
Right.
And then people who maybe needed to do things because they were in an environment with maybe immune compromised people or something like that
Right.
got very strong feelings that they weren't. And then they caused more damage. People
Right.
who might not have been, like some random schlub like myself, was like, okay, whatever. I stay home most of the time anyway. Who cares? But you're spreading the wrong message to the people who may
Right.
have needed it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the way that the way this whole thing was handled was a big, huge misinformation, disinformation, all that, like in what we went through. We went through it for 2 years.
Mhm.
2 years. Like I went to the hospital the other day because that's where my doctor's at, my general practice doctor, and they didn't have to. They got rid of masks 3 weeks ago. So I was like, yo, this is different. I don't got to wear a mask up in there. That's nice. Like, yeah, we got rid of it 3 weeks ago, and I get it. You go into the hospital, there's
Mhm.
cancer patients, things like that. And I got to see a doctor. I got to see my doctor. I got to get my
Mhm.
checkups and everything taken care of. So I get it. In that regard, I get it. There, you don't want people. I don't want people. I don't want anybody
Mm.
that might be immune compromised something to get something from me, you know. And that's important. There's kids in there and all that, and it's just the whole thing was handled so poorly by everybody.
Mm.
Politicians, corporations,
Oh, from all
uh,
sides. Like all sides are pretty guilty on the whole thing, whether you were
even
for certain things
citizens,
or against certain things. Yeah.
even citizens. And it's like we ever since like 2016, it's just been nothing but like us going back and forth with each other. Like we said at the start of the show, I miss the days where you just went and voted. You
Mhm.
know, if you didn't like somebody, you talk about it with your friends, like, man, I don't like that person. I don't like this politician. I don't like what they stand for. But that's it. You didn't go on the internet and you didn't spout off a bunch of nonsense and a bunch of ignorance about this person's this or this person's that. And like I said, I'm guilty of it. I've done it. I don't do it anymore, but I've done it, sure. But I think at the same time, it's like we need to grow up. Like, if you don't like something, fine. Does everybody need to know you don't like it? No, they don't. They don't need to know that. Keep it to yourself. Like I've been voting since I was 18 years old. I voted in pretty much every single presidential election that has been. And a good majority of them, I go in, I cast my vote. I wake up the next day, see who won. If it's not the guy I wanted, okay, keep it moving. Do the best I can in their administration, because I haven't voted for a lot of the presidents that have won. I'm an independent guy. I vote independent. That's nobody's business but mine. I'm not going to get into that. But it's like nowadays, man, you're like, I'm voting for him. You're what?
Mm.
You're not part of this family anymore because blah, blah. They don't like these people and they don't give them rights. And
A
you,
vote
and I,
for them is a throw it away vote. A vote for this is a
right,
vote for
right.
tyranny. A vote for
And,
this is
and,
a
and
vote
now
for.
I always have to go, what rights are we losing? What rights as Americans are we losing? We're not losing any rights. We're privileged. We're entitled. Americans are the most privileged, entitled group of people you will ever meet in the entire world. We're not losing any rights. You still have the right
Meanwhile,
to. Meanwhile, in other
meanwhile,
countries,
in Afghanistan, The Taliban has forced everybody to wear full head covering for
Yes.
women. And not only that, but in order to make sure that they can actually look after their women, they're being forced to train women as doctors strictly to keep them segregated.
Yes.
Like, it's not because they want to better, like, oh, we want to keep care of our women. It's to keep them segregated from the male doctors.
Yes.
It's like, we don't want any temptation. So they're training female doctors on purpose just to do that. And it's really like, it's gross. It's terrible.
100%
It's like,
disgusting. It's a product of a misinformed religious ideology.
and
And
everything
that's
that we
what
did
it's
over
been.
there, supposedly, if we did anything at all, just is gone. There's like no indication that we were ever there, and we were there for more than a
No.
decade. Like,
Yup.
and
We
nothing
sure were.
changed. Nothing changed.
Well, no, it
at
changed,
all.
and then it went right back to what it was before. So
Yep. So, I mean, we think we have problems here. And yeah, we got problems.
we sure
We got all
do.
kinds of problems. We got violence all over the place. I've got
Right.
shootings in my neighborhood every other week nowadays. But we're still the freest country in the world right now,
Yes.
so far. And as
So
far
far.
as we know, we might be happy slaves. We don't know that.
Denmark
There's a lot of
might be the
conspiracy
freest
theories.
country out there, but Denmark's
Maybe.
a very
Holland.
homogenous population.
Holland.
Right.
Ooh.
No.
But don't get started there. But
Don't do But
but yeah, I mean, we're in a pretty
It's
good
true.
spot. We just have to stop seeing
true.
our neighbors as the enemy
yes.
and start working more together and stop taking like every single article from CNN, from Fox,
Thank
from
you.
MSNBC,
Thank
from
you.
wherever, from all the major things, HuffPo, Washington Post, whatever, because they're all against you. They're all trying to convince you.
There
And
it
the
is.
way you do it, and I'm going to bring it up real quick because we're at the very end. Next time you read a news story from either CNN or Fox or any of those guys, strike out all the adjectives.
Yep.
Strike out every single adjective, everything that's descriptive, everything that's emotional, all that, and just
Yep.
look at what it says afterwards.
Yes.
I bet you the story between CNN, Fox, everybody, it's the exact same
Yes.
article.
100%.
The only difference is they throw in
Those
an
adjectives.
adjective
Yep.
that turns you against one side or the other.
There it is. And that's it. Like at the end of the day, you can't, I see so many people that go and they're like, well, you vote for this guy who took rights from, no rights were taken. Nobody's taking your rights. The big bad rights boogeyman isn't coming to take your rights. If they do, it'll be too late. I mean, in a roundabout way, they've taken some. The government's really on this gun thing, and I'm questioning whether their ideology is because they want to keep us safe or they want to keep us from revolting. And you
Keep
have
them
to
safe.
You
It's
have
either
to
keep us safe or
realize
keep them safe.
they're slipping. People are waking up more than ever and being like, "Yo, the government isn't."
The federal government isn't going to give up their guns.
No, they are.
I'm just going to say they are not going to give up their guns.
Not at all.
I'm not going to use that as a justification that everybody should go arm themselves today.
No.
I'm just going to say no matter what kind of gun control ever comes down the pipes, the federal government is always going to be exempt.
They will always keep their guns. Yes. Always.
Think about it.
If
anything else comes up and you need to be argumentative, who's going to have the guns? We won't. They will.
Think about that. Don't give the federal government power that they do not need. And they don't need any power, to be perfectly honest. You know what they need to do? They need to make sure we're safe. That's it. And not by gun control. They need to make sure that things work. And they don't. When there's more government involved and we let more politicians do more things, then we get less votes for that cat right there. And any vote not for that cat.
I almost added cats to the intro video as like part of the benefits. Probably for the next edition of it, because I'm sure in the future we'll have to have an updated one because we'll expand a little bit more and we'll have more stuff to talk about. But cats.
Facts. Okay, we'll get some of my hooligans, some of your hooligans.
Yep.
But the one thing, like as we close the show here tonight, the one thing I want you guys to take away is understand this. I am not your enemy. The man next to me is not your enemy, or on the air next to me. We're not your enemy. Don't come for us. We are in the same boat, in the same country, doing the same thing all of you were doing. Just trying to survive, man. Just trying to make it. Just trying to do what we do to provide great quality content for you guys every week. That's it. We're just trying, man. That's all. Anyways, y'all, that's it. You ain't got to stay here, but you can go somewhere else if you want. Bar's closed. Anyways, y'all, as always, we are your hosts, Robert, Solomon, and Spider. And we'll be back on Friday with some more beautiful bean footage.
Twofer.
Twofer. Y'all get it this week. Twofers. I don't know. There's 2 chains. I don't know. Anyways, y'all, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Peace.